On January 15, 2009, a flock of birds brought down a jet engine carrying 155 people. Both engines failed within seconds of each other. The plane had no power, no thrust, and was rapidly losing altitude over one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. The pilot had less than 4 minutes to make a decision that would save or end every life on board. This is the story of US Airways Flight 1549 and the small birds that brought it down. But more importantly, this is the story of how that single event quietly transformed the entire aviation industry forever. To understand how dangerous birds actually are to airplanes, you need to understand a simple fact most people never think about. A bird weighing just a few pounds, hitting a plane traveling at several hundred miles per hour, hits with the force of a small bomb. This is simple physics. Speed multiplies force dramatically. Bird strikes have been a known risk in aviation since the very first powered flights. In fact, the very first recorded bird strike fatality happened in 1912, just 9 years after the Wright brothers' first flight. For decades, bird strikes were treated as a rare nuisance rather than a serious threat. That assumption was about to be tested in the worst possible way. On the afternoon of January 15, 2009, US Airways Flight 1549 took off from LaGuardia Airport in New York. On board were 150 passengers and 5 crew members. Just 90 seconds after takeoff, the pilot saw something out the front window. A flock of Canada geese, large birds weighing up to 12 pounds each. The flock was directly in the plane's flight path. There was no time to avoid them. Multiple birds were ingested into both engines simultaneously. Inside a jet engine, the fan blades spin at thousands of rotations per minute. A bird hitting those blades at that speed causes catastrophic internal damage almost instantly. Both of Flight 1549's engines lost all power within seconds. The pilot, Captain Chesley Sullenberger, immediately understood the severity of the situation. He radioed air traffic control with 4 words that pilots train their entire careers to never have to say. He said, "We've lost thrust in both engines." The plane was now essentially a 150,000-pound glider over Manhattan. Air traffic control offered to redirect the plane back to LaGuardia or to a nearby airport in New Jersey. Sullenberger quickly calculated that neither airport was reachable. He made a decision that no commercial pilot had successfully executed before. He would land the plane on the Hudson River. He came over the cabin intercom and said 3 words that passengers would never forget. "Brace for impact." At 3:31 p.m., with both engines dead and no power, Sullenberger glided the plane down toward the icy river. He had to keep the wings perfectly level and the nose at exactly the right angle. One small mistake and the plane would break apart on impact. At 3:31 and 36 seconds, the plane touched down on the Hudson River. The landing, now famously called the Miracle on the Hudson, kept the plane intact. All 155 people on board survived. Passengers climbed out onto the wings as ferries rushed to rescue them. The entire world watched in disbelief. Captain Sullenberger became a national hero overnight. But behind the headlines, investigators were asking a much bigger question. How could 2 birds bring down a modern aircraft with multiple redundant safety systems? The answer revealed a massive blind spot in aviation engineering. Jet engines were tested for bird strikes, but the testing standards were dangerously outdated. Most engine certification tests used birds weighing around 4 pounds, but the Canada geese that hit Flight 1549 weighed up to 12 pounds, 3 times heavier. The engines simply weren't designed to survive an impact of that size. This single fact triggered a massive re-evaluation across the entire aviation industry. Regulators realized that bird populations themselves had changed dramatically over the decades. Conservation efforts in the 20th century had successfully restored Canada goose populations. Their population in North America grew from around 100,000 birds to over 5 million. This was wonderful for conservation, but created an unexpected new risk for aviation. More birds, especially larger birds, meant a much higher chance of serious bird strikes. Aviation regulators had simply not kept pace with this ecological shift. After Flight 1549, the Federal Aviation Administration completely rewrote its bird strike testing requirements. Engines now had to be tested against birds weighing up to 8 pounds, and large flocking birds up to several times that size. Manufacturers had to redesign engine intake systems to withstand much larger impacts. New blade materials were developed that could bend without shattering on impact. Engineers also redesigned the engine casings to better contain debris if a blade did fail. Today, Every new commercial jet engine must pass dramatically more rigorous bird strike testing than the engines on Flight 1549. But the changes did not stop at engine design. Airports across the world dramatically increased their wildlife management programs. Some airports now use trained falcons to scare away smaller birds from runways. Others use specialized radar systems that detect bird flocks in real time. Airports have changed landscaping near runways specifically to make the environment less attractive to birds. Pilots now receive specific training on bird strike emergency procedures based directly on lessons from Flight 1549. Water landing procedures, once considered an extreme and unlikely scenario, are now a standard part of pilot training. The flight data recorder from Flight 1549 became one of the most studied black boxes in aviation history. Engineers replayed every second of that flight to understand exactly what worked and what could be improved. Today, when you board a plane, you are flying on an aircraft built to standards that did not exist before this single event. Every engine on every modern commercial aircraft has been shaped, in some way, by what happened on that January afternoon. And it all started with a flock of geese that happened to cross paths with one aeroplane on one ordinary afternoon. Next time you fly and feel completely safe, remember that safety did not happen by accident. It was built, piece by piece, from disasters that almost happened, and from the people who refused to let them happen again.